From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
And good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington. It's the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's delegation and other leaders about the federal matters that matter to you. Today's topic, making the case to Congress, an update on the effort to ban internet gambling. And my guests today are Mr. Matt Keelen and Aaron Cohen. Mr. Keelen is a U.S. House strategist and counsel to the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. Mr. Cohen is a U.S. Senate strategist and counsel to the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. And gentlemen, thanks both of you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
A chorus in objection to online gambling. Well, that's what one gambling reporter said following a recent special congressional subcommittee hearing that may have breathed new life into the effort to ban internet betting. And today on Eye on Washington, we're going to look at that September hearing on the Hill. We'll find out whether it might impact the future of online gambling, and we'll reintroduce you to the coalition behind the effort to halt the activity. Well, in late September, a congressional hearing on sports betting was expanded to examine controversies surrounding the online gambling industry around the world, and it appears to have gone well for those trying to ban betting online. A few highlights for you. Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte and Subcommittee Chair Jim Sensenbrenner expressed particular concern with online casinos in the UK, where more than half of 16-year-olds have gambling apps on their smartphones. Speaking of the potential impact of on the internet gambling industry, the publication Gambling Compliance wrote this, quote, "It's hard to imagine how the much-anticipated congressional hearing on sports betting could have gone any worse." And former Nebraska Attorney General John Bruning called for the restoration and full enforcement of the Federal Wire Act. He said it's needed to prevent unlicensed and illegal online gambling sites from taking advantage of the spread of legalized sports betting across America. And gentlemen, welcome to Eye on Washington. Good to have you here. We're going to talk more about the coalition and its focus later in the show. For now, I wanted to focus more on the hearing and what it might mean to the effort to ban online betting. From what I gathered to your staffs prior to our get-together this afternoon, you're quite elated with the way the hearing went.
We thought it went very well. We appreciated the subcommittee taking the time to look at this important issue. And I think the three main topics that we got from out of the hearing was, one, that this should not be a situation where it is the Wild West in every state setting up their own regime in which the federal government has no role whatsoever. Two, that the bad actors that are currently in the marketplace should have some kind of a recourse by the federal government or those who are able to create some law enforcement around those entities to have an opportunity to shut them down and to really show that there is no room within the space for those who are operating, especially offshore. And the third is giving the opportunity for Congress to take a step back and restart the entire focus that they've had for more than 50 years on internet gambling and having a role that is assertive for them and speaking the will of the people on this important issue.
Mr. Keelen, that gambling reporter that I mentioned near the start of the show was John Brennan of DGS Media. And again, he said it was a chorus in objection. Do you think that's being overly optimistic?
No, not at all. In fact, it was a bipartisan chorus. Jerry Nadler on the Democrat side was very critical as well. And I think you can go back to what happened when the Obama administration overturned the Wire Act and when the FBI at the time came out and said, this is something that we wouldn't do. International crime syndicates, terrorist groups can use this type of betting to get funding. And I think it's one of the things that those law enforcement groups, particularly Attorney General Bruning and Chairman Goodlatte, pointed out, and the other witnesses didn't really have an answer to those questions.
Yeah, Mr. Cohen, I mentioned that former Nebraska Attorney General John Bruning was calling for the restoration of full enforcement of the Wire Act. We've discussed it here, of course, on the show before, the Wire Act, but would you take just a second to remind my audience what the Wire Act is and why it's important to your effort?
Sure. The Wire Act was passed in 1961 done by Congress, but also in concert with the president and with DOJ. Significant input by the agency to show exactly why it was important to not only at the time restrict the amount of betting that was done online, but to really crack down on crime bosses that were being able to use wires to create bets and do illegal things across state lines. And so the Wire Act is really the anchor for which Congress has used to implement the framework of online betting, and then, of course, several years later, having UGIA put into place to limit those tools of communications so that those who were using nefarious opportunities, those bad actors, again, as I said before, to be able to use those chances to conduct illegal gambling online, was put in place to have yet another enforcement tool for the federal government to use.
Mr. Keelen, you know, I mentioned some concern voiced about what's going on in the UK, that 50% of the kids there have gambling apps on their phone. And I read that 2 out of 3 of those UK teens say they feel bombarded by online gambling ads. What have you heard about that? And I'm imagining the problem is about as serious here in the United States.
Well, we've already seen a case in the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia market where an online casino has been advertising on the Cartoon Network. Last time I checked, not a lot of adults are watching the Cartoon Network. And in fact, it goes all the way down to the cartoon, the Rugrats, which my kids watched when they were about 5 and 6 years old. The problem with this whole industry and what we're worried about is the proliferation of advertisements around particularly sports betting. We saw it with DraftKings during fantasy football surge, where every other ad, it seemed like, on a football game was talking about DraftKings. And we think the same thing will happen here around all sports betting. And what happened during the FIFA World Cup was almost every other ad was from an online casino. So kids are just being bombarded. And they're also, we have found them advertising on addiction sites for gaming, which I think is the lowest of the low.
Okay. And when we return, so just what is the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling? And how has it come so far since its founding just 5 years ago? We're going to have that for you right after this.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, brought to you by Caesars Entertainment, the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, NV Energy, Jim Marsh Automotive and Body Shop, the Rogich Communications Group, and Renown Health.
I have 3 tests next week. I'm going to be studying all weekend. Ugh. Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Oh yeah, that sounds good. What time? I work until 6. Okay, sounds good. Just text me after. Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
I got my own iPod Touch and used my dad's login to get on gambling sites. Poker is the best, but I'm losing a lot. Since I'm too young to play, they're not allowed to keep the money, and my dad won't find out. That's right, isn't it?
They are the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen. But what does it take to bridge the distance and keep them connected to family, home, and country? What does it take to strengthen our service members so they can be the greatest force for good in the world? It takes a force. Be a force behind the forces. Share a message today at force.uso.org.
unsafe sleep conditions cause serious injury and even death to infants. Never sleep with your baby on a sofa, in a chair, or in an adult bed. Protect the baby you love from becoming a tragic statistic. The only safe place for your baby to sleep is alone, on its back, in a crib, and in your room. For more information, visit cribsforkids.org. That's cribsforkids.org.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington and our update on efforts to ban online gambling. We've been visiting with our special guest today, Mr. Matt Keelen and Aaron Cohen. Mr. Keelen is a U.S. House strategist and counsel to the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. And Mr. Cohen is a U.S. Senate strategist and counsel to the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. So what is the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling? Well, for some time, there's been a debate on Capitol Hill and around this country regarding whether internet gambling is a good bet or a bad bet, good or bad for our economy, for our families, for our security. Well, Las Vegas Sands Corporation Chairman Sheldon Adelson was so concerned about what he believed were negative impacts of online betting that in 2013 he founded the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. Its goal is the total ban of online betting, not just sports betting, but all online gambling. Its supporters say internet betting poses numerous threats, that it negatively impacts children and gambling addicts, that it attracts terrorists and money launderers, that it tempts gambling addicts, among other problems we're going to detail for you later. And Mr. Cohen, we're going to look at the Coalition's main arguments that internet gambling should be banned. But for this segment, I really wanted to look at the founding and help my audience understand why the issue is so hugely important to Mr. Adelson that he even started this major and growing effort.
The reason why this started was, as we talked before, there were two major laws passed by Congress over the last 50 years to give the enforcement tools to Department of Justice with the stamp of Congress to stop these types of activities. In 2011, 2 days before Christmas, the Department of Justice, through their Office of Legal Counsel, basically to bureaucrats in the bowels of DOJ, came out and said that they're going to overturn all of the congressional statutes that Congress had put forward in order to allow internet gambling to move forward. Not a law, just an OLC opinion without the enforcement of law. So Mr. Adelson decided that it was a time to put together a bipartisan, broad group of those concerned individuals across the country to be able to enact some type of a change to overturn that opinion and to go to Congress and make the case that internet gambling outside and put on everyone's phone, basically a casino in your hand at all times, was a bad idea.
Mr. Keelen, we touched on it last segment, but I want to bring up the Wire Act again because it's one effort that the Coalition really has spearheaded, that it is about the restoration, the importance of the restoration. It really is a big part of the overall effort, isn't it?
It is. And Attorney General Kennedy, when he brought this to bear in 1961, knew the best way to stop the mob was to stop money crossing state lines. And anything on the internet, Marley, is going to go across the state lines. And one of the things, the reasons that the Coalition is so fired up to ban this is family groups are very upset that children are being targeted. When you walk into a casino, you're walking into one of the most heavily regulated businesses in America. There is no regulation when they're online. There is no way for that online casino to tell us for sure that a child is not playing that is under 18. And that's one of the things that concerns us the most. There is no regulation, and currently there's no law enforcement that are going after these bad actors. And until that happens, we think we need to restore the Wire Act and protect those children.
Mr. Cohen, again, we're going to look closer at the arguments for and against, but I want to touch on that congressional hearing in September for just a second. Do you believe that the hearing itself may have truly succeeding in helping to push your effort forward, given that there were so many voices on each side so strongly opposed to the activity?
We believe so. We think that the subcommittee chairman, former chairman of the committee, made some very poignant comments related to the federal government's role. It would be different if there hadn't been any kind of laws passed previously for Congress to step in and assert their authority. But there were two major laws passed, as we said, the Wire Act and UG in 2006. And for the Department of Justice to just wipe those away with an opinion without the force of law really, I think, has put an onus back on the federal government to take a timeout, step back, and create something that is new for this generation, for these types of communications that we're currently seeing online, and allows them to reassert their authority as allowed by the Constitution.
Okay. And when we return, counter arguments to those who say internet betting is good for the gaming industry and the economy. That's just ahead.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
When you think RTC, what comes to mind? How about jobs? RTC road projects bring thousands of jobs to Washoe County, expanding and connecting northern Nevada, growing our local economy, providing a more secure future for our residents and their families. So when you think jobs, think RTC, your RTC, the RTC of Washoe County.
Where does the flu come from? I mean, we know it comes from the influenza virus, but how does it get to you or your child? The fact is, the flu virus is everywhere during flu season. And the best way to protect yourself and your family is with a flu vaccine. Getting vaccinated is easy and way better than getting the flu. Find the clinic location nearest you at immunizenevada.org.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
It's not my first time bartending, so.
It's a sausage party in here.
It's fine. I'm very familiar.
Yeah, because you're a sexy girl, Sam. Last thing,
Yeah.
is that the music, when Momo kicks it into high gear, is going to get a little bit loud in here. So your customers are going to have a hard time hearing you. So you may want to.
What?
We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington and our update on efforts to ban online gambling. We've been visiting today with Matt Keelen and Aaron Cohen, Washington-based representatives of the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. Well, let's look now at the reasons the coalition has been working so hard to end online betting. The group stresses these main arguments. They say it poses a threat to the public interest. That's because there are rigorous licensing and regulatory regulations for land-based casinos that are not fully available with internet gambling. The coalition says internet gambling is a destroyer of jobs. Its website says more than 330,000 Americans work in the casino industry, and that online betting, especially if a full assortment of casino-style games are offered, would reduce visits to brick and mortar casinos, and thus reduce employment in the gaming industry and in businesses that cater to it. Next, that online betting promotes underage gambling, that it's nearly impossible to prevent minors from gambling online, and equally nearly impossible to restrict children from accessing their parents' online gambling accounts. And then there's what the coalition says is the exploitation of gambling addicts. The ease of betting online, the group says, makes it too easy for those addicted to the activity to engage in something that's already harming them. Finally, the coalition claims internet gambling opens the door to internet terrorism as well as to money launderers. And Mr. Keelen, I want to start with what our audience might not think is a top reason, but certainly was a top concern of Mr. Adelson and his wife, Dr. Adelson, and that's the exploitation of gambling addicts. You know, helping those struggling with addiction is a huge focus of both of them. Dr. Adelson dedicates her clinic and liveliness to this. It's a big part of your effort as well.
Marley, I have people in my family who are addicts. The first thing that has to happen for an addict is they have to be removed from the stimulus. The problem with a cell phone is everybody has to have one in 2018. And there is absolutely no way for an addict to remove themselves, as long as they have a cell phone, from online gaming. Unfortunately, online gamers know this, and that's why, as I said earlier, some have even taken to advertising on addiction websites, gambling addiction websites. Like I said before, the lowest of the low.
You know, Mr. Cohen, while researching for our show today, I checked out a site called gamblingsites.org, and they have a page on the pros and cons of internet gambling. Here are their 6 pros, quote, entertainment and exciting, convenience and comfort, suitable for all budgets, choice of betting and gaming options, privacy and security, and bonuses and rewards. Now, given some of the things you two have talked about, I'm going to guess you have a real problem with some of these, particularly security and suitable for all budgets.
All you have to do is read the news any day, really, to see that there's been some breach of communication, some breach of the public's trust, some breach of opportunities meant for those who live in our country to abide by the laws, for those offshore who are taking advantage of those who cannot take care of themselves. Online gaming targets, like Matt was saying, really those who are not able to take care of themselves in environments that are unsafe. And to be able to, with a straight face, to say that there is geolocation technology available and that there are safeguards in place on the internet, which is really the Wild West, especially when it comes to gambling, is a bit far-fetched.
Okay. And when we return, following a strong showing at that congressional hearing, what's next in the coalition effort? We're going to ask my guest that right after this.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
I got my own iPod Touch and use my dad's login to get on gambling sites. Poker is the best, but I'm losing a lot. Since I'm too young to play, they're not allowed to keep the money, and my dad won't find out. That's right, isn't it?
Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together.
Just text me after.
Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up. And look out for each other.
My son, Christopher Parado, was 20 years old when he was prescribed opioids. It took him 5 days to get addicted. I'm not supposed to be the one to go get his suit and tie and pick which sneakers that I'm gonna bury him in. My son overdosed at the age of 22 years old.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
And we are back with our closing segment of today's Eye on Washington. We've had as our very special guest today Mr. Matt Keelen and Mr. Aaron Cohen. They are both Washington-based representatives for the Coalition to Stop Internet Gambling. Gentlemen, as we wrap up our show today, again, you sounded pretty elated about the September hearing and its results, but at the same time, you sound grounded in the reality that there is a long fight in front of you. As we close today, where do things stand? What's next in your opinion? And what do you see happening on the issue with the new Congress as it comes together in January?
We do have a long fight ahead, but it is a short time frame in which we're working with. There are states, as you know, right now that are working to further their internet gambling opportunities on the sports betting side as well. We have a presence at the federal level, but also are very active in 9 or 10 states across the country. So that puts a lot of pressure on us here at the federal level to, number one, have the DOJ recognize that the OLC opinion in 2011 was erroneous. But two, also to convince the legislators on the Hill that there is an opportunity for Congress to take a step back now and to reassert their authority on federal gaming legislation, not only to encompass what is happening on internet gambling, but also to do the same on sports betting. The Supreme Court decision a couple of months ago was another stepping point for us to be able to go back to Congress and use this opportunity, and we hope they use it.
Mr. Keelen?
Marley, the coalition is excited about the hearing because the hearing brought a bipartisan voice to this problem. And that problem consists of children being targeted, gambling addicts being targeted, crime syndicates and terrorists using this as ways of funding. So we believe that the Congress will put pressure on the Department of Justice to take a new look at this issue and agree that the Obama Justice Department made a mistake and hopefully restore the Wire Act.
Gentlemen, thanks both of you for being here today.
Thank you.
That does wrap up this week's Eye on Washington, but we are always here for you, keeping Nevadans on top of all federal matters that matter most to you. You can just go to our website, joycecommunications.com. And while you're there, check out all the federal issues that impact Nevada. You can like us on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and catch up with any shows you may have missed on our YouTube page. Thanks for joining us today on Eye on Washington. I'm Marilee Joyce in Washington, D.C. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce airs statewide in Nevada solely due to the generosity of our sponsors. Can your company help us continue our mission to remain Nevada's top source of federal news? If you can help us help Nevadans, please visit joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors and join us today. That's joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors.